The galaxy was vast, a swirling sea of stars, and endless mysteries waiting to be uncovered. For centuries, humanity had dreamed of reaching beyond its home system, seeking answers to age-old questions about life, existence, and the universe itself. Progress had been slow, but steady, with colonies established on distant moons and planets, trade routes connecting far-off worlds, and alliances formed between species once thought too alien to understand each other. Yet, for all their achievements, there were still corners of space that remained uncharted places where even the bravest explorers hesitated to go. It was in one such corner of the galaxy, deep in the void between star systems, that something unusual happened. A signal, faint but unmistakable, began pulsing through the darkness. It wasn't random noise or cosmic radiation. It was deliberate, structured, almost like a message. The signal traveled across light years, bouncing off satellites and relay stations until it reached the ears of those who could interpret it. And when they did, everything changed. At the United Earth Space Command, USC, located on a sprawling orbital station high above Earth, Captain Laura Hayes sat in her office reviewing reports. Her day had been long, filled with meetings about resource allocation and diplomatic negotiations with neighboring alien races. She sighed, rubbing her temples as she glanced at the clock. Just as she considered calling it a night, an urgent alert flashed on her console. Frowning, she leaned forward and tapped the screen. "What is it?" Laura asked, already rising from her chair. "We've picked up a transmission. It's strange. Not like anything we've encountered before." Laura moved quickly, striding down the corridors of the station until she reached the communications hub. Inside, technicians huddled around monitors, their faces illuminated by glowing screens. Klein stood nearby, pointing at a display showing a series of waveforms. "Explain," Laura said simply. Klein nodded. "We detected it about 30 minutes ago. At first, we thought it might be interference from solar activity, but then we realized it's repeating. Listen." He pressed a button, and the room fell silent, except for a low hum emanating from the speakers. Then, slowly, patterns emerged within the sound tones, rising and falling in sequence, forming what sounded almost like language. But it wasn't any language currently spoken in the galaxy. It was older, rawer, more primal. Laura frowned. "Can you clean it up? Isolate the pattern?" One of the technicians nodded and adjusted some controls. After a moment, clearer sounds emerged. They were fragmented, broken, but recognizable as words. Words in an ancient dialect of English. One used centuries ago, during humanity's earliest days of space exploration. "This can't be right," Laura muttered under her breath. "It gets better," Klein said grimly. He brought up another set of data on a secondary monitor. "We traced the origin point of the signal. It matches the last known trajectory of the Odyssey." The name sent a chill through the room. Everyone present knew the story of the Odyssey, a human vessel launched over 200 years earlier, during humanity's first attempt to leave the Milky Way. Equipped with experimental engines and crewed by volunteers eager to make history, the ship had vanished without a trace shortly after crossing into intergalactic space. Search parties had been sent out, theories proposed, and eventually, hope abandoned. The Odyssey became a legend, cautionary tale of humanity's hubris in venturing too far, too fast, and now, here. It was again, or at least, a signal matching its signature. Laura stared at the data, her mind racing. Could it really be the Odyssey? If so, how had it survived for so long? What had happened to its crew? And why was it sending a message now, after all these years? "Get me Admiral Grant," she ordered sharply, "and prep a team for analysis. We're going to need linguists, cryptographers, anyone who can help us decode this." As the technician scrambled to follow her instructions, Laura allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Something about this discovery felt off. It wasn't just the improbability of the Odyssey returning, it was the tone of the message itself. There was no joy, no triumph in it. Instead, it carried an undertone of desperation, as though whatever was transmitting it, needed help and quickly. Hours later, Admiral Grant arrived, his expression grave. He listened intently as Laura summarized the situation, occasionally nodding or asking pointed questions. When she finished, he exhaled heavily. "This changes everything," he said finally. "If it's really the Odyssey, we have to investigate. But we also have to prepare for the worst. Whatever happened to them out there, it might not be over." Laura agreed. Over the next few days, USC mobilized resources, assembling a task force to track the signal and determine its source. Ships were dispatched to patrol nearby sectors, while analysts worked tirelessly to piece together fragments of the message. Each new revelation only deepened the mystery. One phrase, repeated multiple times throughout the transmission, stood out. "Help us." It was simple, direct, and chilling in its implications. Who was asking for help? Was it the original crew of the Odyssey? Or had someone or something else taken control of the ship? As the investigation progressed, rumors spread among the staff. Some speculated that the Odyssey had encountered extraterrestrial life, perhaps even hostile forces. Others suggested that time dilation might have occurred due to the ship traveling at relativistic speeds, meaning decades or even centuries could have passed on board while mere years elapsed elsewhere. Still others whispered darker theories that the Odyssey had stumbled upon something unnatural, something that defied the laws of physics and reason. Despite the mounting tension, Laura remained focused. She knew that panic would only cloud judgment, and they needed clear minds to handle whatever lay ahead. Every lead was followed, every possibility explored. Slowly but surely, they narrowed down the location of the signal. Finally, after weeks of effort, they pinpointed its origin, a remote sector of space near the edge of the galaxy, far from any known trade routes or inhabited worlds. It was a desolate region, barren and cold, yet somehow alive with faint energy readings, unlike anything recorded before. Admiral Grant authorized a reconnaissance mission, led by none other than Captain Laura Hayes herself. A small fleet of ships, equipped with state-of-the-art sensors and defensive capabilities, prepared to embark on what promised to be the most perilous journey in recent history. As Laura stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring out at the endless expanse of stars, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into the unknown. The Odyssey had returned, yes, but what secrets had it brought back with it, and were they ready to face them? With a final glance at her crew, she gave the order to engage the engines. The ships surged forward, leaving behind the safety of familiar space and plunging into the great unknown. Whatever awaited them, they would find out soon enough. The journey to the remote sector of space was long and tense. The fleet moved cautiously, their sensors scanning for any sign of danger. Captain Laura Hayes spent most of her time on the bridge, her sharp eyes glued to the monitors as data streamed in from the surrounding void. She rarely spoke unless necessary, her mind preoccupied with questions about what they might find. Her crew worked quietly, each member focused on their tasks, but the unease in the air was palpable. No one knew what awaited them at the source of the signal. After days of travel, the fleet reached the coordinates where the transmission had originated. At first, there was nothing, just empty space stretching endlessly in every direction. Then, faintly visible against the backdrop of stars, a dark shape emerged. It was a ship, drifting silently, as if abandoned. Its hull was battered and scarred, evidence of battles fought in regions no human had ever explored. But despite its condition, the design was unmistakable. It was the Odyssey. A collective gasp rippled through the crew as the realization sank in. The legendary ship, lost for over 2 centuries, had returned. Yet, there was no celebration, no sense of triumph. Instead, An eerie silence fell over the bridge. The Odyssey looked less like a vessel of exploration and more like a ghost haunting the edges of reality. "Scan it," Laura ordered, breaking the quiet. "I want to know everything: power levels, life signs, structural integrity. Leave nothing unchecked." The technicians sprang into action, directing scanners toward the derelict ship. As readings came in, the tension grew thicker. The Odyssey's power core was offline, its systems inactive. There were no signs of life aboard, not even residual heat signatures that would indicate recent activity. But something else caught their attention: strange energy fluctuations emanating from within the ship. These pulses didn't match any known technology, human or otherwise. Laura turned to Lieutenant Marcus Klein, who had been monitoring the scans. "What are we looking at here?" Klein hesitated before answering. "It's unusual, Captain. The energy patterns suggest some kind of advanced machinery is still operational inside the ship. It's faint, but it's definitely there. And, well, it doesn't correspond to anything in our database." Laura frowned. Could it be alien tech? Something they picked up out there? "It's possible," Klein admitted. "But without closer inspection, we can't say for sure." With no other options, Laura made the decision to send a boarding party to investigate. Commander Ryan Cole, a seasoned officer known for his calm under pressure, volunteered to lead the team. Accompanying him were 3 specialists: Dr. Emily Carter, a physicist with expertise in exotic energy sources; Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, a skilled engineer; and Sergeant Megan Riley, a security officer trained to handle unknown threats. As the shuttle detached from the flagship and approached the Odyssey, the mood among the boarding party was somber. They knew this mission carried risks far beyond anything they'd faced before. The Odyssey wasn't just a relic of humanity's past, it was a mystery wrapped in darkness, and none of them could shake the feeling that they were stepping into something far bigger than themselves. When the shuttle docked with the Odyssey, the boarding party suited up in protective gear and prepared to enter. The airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor dimly lit by emergency lights flickering weakly. Dust coated every surface, and the metallic walls bore deep gouges and scorch marks, evidence of violence that had taken place long ago. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft hum of failing systems. Cole led the way, his weapon drawn but lowered. Behind him, Carter clutched a handheld scanner, her brow furrowed as she analyzed the environment. Brooks and Riley brought up the rear, their eyes darting nervously around the shadowy passageways. "This place feels wrong," Riley murmured, voicing what everyone else was thinking. Cole nodded, but said nothing. He signaled for the group to move forward, their footsteps echoing hollowly in the confined space. As they ventured deeper into the ship, they began noticing strange symbols etched into the walls. They weren't written in any language the humans recognized, yet they seemed deliberate, almost ritualistic. Some glowed faintly, pulsing with the same mysterious energy detected earlier. "What do you make of these?" Cole asked, gesturing to the markings. Carter examined them closely, her scanner worried softly. "They're emitting low-level radiation, but it's unlike anything I've seen before. It's almost as if they're alive." "Alive," Brooks repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "I don't mean literally," Carter clarified, "but the energy patterns suggest some kind of self-sustaining process. Whoever or whatever made these must have had access to technology far beyond ours." The group pressed on, their unease growing with each step. The deeper they went, the stranger the ship became. Panels along the walls displayed cryptic diagrams and equations that defied logic. Devices hummed faintly, their purpose entirely unclear. In one room, they found what appeared to be a laboratory, though the equipment inside was unrecognizable. Tubes filled with glowing liquid lined the walls, while consoles displayed streams of incomprehensible data. "This isn't human tech," Cole said finally, breaking the silence. Something happened to this ship, something big. Before anyone could respond, Carter let out a sharp intake of breath. She pointed to a console in the corner of the room. Unlike the others, this one was active, its screen displaying lines of text in fragmented English. The message read, "Do not trust the gift. They see all. They take all." The words sent a chill down everyone's spines. Cole stepped closer, studying the display. Who wrote this? Was it the crew? It's hard to tell, Carter replied. The syntax is inconsistent, like it was written by someone under extreme stress or maybe not entirely human anymore. Riley tightened her grip on her weapon. We should get out of here. This whole place gives me the creeps. We need to keep going, Cole countered firmly. If there's a chance the crew left behind information about what happened to them, we have to find it. Reluctantly, the group continued their search. Eventually, they reached the ship's command center. The large circular room was dominated by a massive view screen, now cracked and dark. Consoles surrounded the perimeter, many of them smashed or burned out. In the center of the room stood a pedestal-like device, its surface covered in the same glowing symbols they'd seen earlier. Carter approached the device cautiously, her scanner buzzing urgently. "This is the source of the energy readings," she said. "Whatever it is, it's incredibly powerful. I've never seen anything like it." As she studied the device, Brooks noticed something tucked beneath a nearby console datapad. He picked it up carefully and activated it. The screen flickered to life, displaying a series of fragmented logs. Most were corrupted, but a few entries remained intact. One in particular caught his attention. Day 47, contact established. They call themselves the Shard Mind. Their knowledge is vast, their power limitless. They offer us gifts beyond imagination, but at what cost? I fear we may have made a grave mistake. Brooks showed the log to Cole, who read it silently. His expression darkened. The Shard Mind, he muttered. That must be who or what they encountered. Looks like they got more than they bargained for, Riley added grimly. Before they could discuss further, a sudden tremor shook the ship. Lights flickered violently, and the hum of energy grew louder, almost deafening. Carter backed away from the pedestal, her face pale. Something's activating. We need to leave. Now. Without hesitation, Cole ordered the team to retreat. They moved quickly, retracing their steps through the labyrinthine corridors. But as they neared the airlock, they realized something was wrong. The shuttle they'd arrived in was gone. What the hell? Brooks exclaimed, staring at the empty docking bay. It couldn't have detached on its own, Cole said, his voice tight. Someone or something took it. Panic began to creep in, but Cole forced himself to stay calm. We'll find another way out. Stick together. As they regrouped, the tremors intensified. The glowing symbols on the walls brightened, casting eerie shadows across the corridors. Faint whispers echoed around them, indistinct, but growing louder with each passing second. It sounded like voices speaking in overlapping languages, none of which the humans could understand. They're here, Carter whispered, clutching her scanner tightly. Whatever they are, they're waking up. Cole glanced at his team, seeing the fear in their eyes. He knew they couldn't stay on the Odyssey any longer. Whatever force had taken control of the ship posed a threat far greater than they'd anticipated. With no time to waste, he led them toward the nearest escape pod bay, hoping they could reach safety before it was too late. Behind them, the whispers grew louder, forming words that sent shivers down their spines. They see you. The escape pod bay was their only hope. As Commander Ryan Cole and his team sprinted through the narrow corridors of the Odyssey, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. The air seemed heavier, pressing down on them like an invisible weight. Lights flickered erratically, casting jagged shadows that danced unnaturally along the walls. Each step echoed ominously, as if the ship itself were alive and watching their every move. This way. Cole shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. He pointed to a doorway up ahead, its frame glowing faintly with the same eerie energy that pulsed throughout the ship. Behind them, the whispers coalesced into fragmented phrases, words spoken in voices that weren't human. "You cannot hide," they murmured. "We are eternal." Dr. Emily Carter stumbled but quickly regained her footing, clutching her scanner so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her eyes darted nervously between the device and the corridor behind them. "Something's following us," she said breathlessly. "I don't know what it is, but it's closing in." Sergeant Megan Riley glanced over her shoulder, her weapon raised. She scanned the darkness for movement, her finger hovering over the trigger. "Whatever it is, we're not sticking around to find out," she snapped. "Keep moving." They reached the escape pod bay, just as another tremor rocked the ship. The doors slid open with a groan, revealing a small chamber lined with pods designed for emergency evacuations. Most of the pods were intact, though some bore scorch marks and dents from battles fought long ago. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks immediately began inspecting the nearest pod, checking its systems for functionality. "Hurry up," Cole urged, glancing back at the corridor. The whispers had grown louder, almost deafening now, and the glowing symbols etched into the walls began to pulse in sync with the sound. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the floor, writhing like living things. "It's working," Brooks called out, relief evident in his voice. "This one's good to go." Cole gestured for the others to board. "Get inside. Move." Carter hesitated, her gaze fixed on the pedestal-like device they'd seen earlier in the command center. Its energy signature still dominated her scanner, stronger than ever. "We can't just leave this here," she said urgently. "If whatever activated it gets loose, there's no time." Riley barked, grabbing Carter by the arm and pulling her toward the pod. "We'll deal with it later." Reluctantly, Carter allowed herself to be dragged inside. The four of them squeezed into the cramped space, securing themselves as best they could. Brooks initiated the launch sequence, his hands flying over the controls. The pod's engines roared to life, vibrating beneath their feet. Outside, the whispers reached a fever pitch, blending into a cacophony of overlapping voices. The shadows surged forward, twisting into grotesque shapes that loomed menacingly in the doorway. For a moment, Cole thought he saw faces within the darkness, faces that weren't human, their features distorted and alien. "Launch," Cole yelled. Brooks slammed his hand down on the final control, and the pod shot forward, detaching from the Odyssey with a jolt. The force threw them against their restraints as the pod hurtled into the void of space. Through the small viewport, they watched the derelict ship shrink rapidly behind them. For a few seconds, there was silence. The oppressive weight of the Odyssey lifted, replaced by the cold emptiness of the cosmos. Exhausted, the team slumped in their seats, trying to catch their breath. "We made it," Riley said finally, her voice shaky. "That was too close." Cole nodded, though his expression remained grim. "But we left something behind, something dangerous." Carter clutched her scanner tightly, staring at the readings. "That device, it's still active, and growing. Stronger, if it spreads beyond the ship." She didn't need to finish her sentence. They all understood the implications. Whatever technology the Odyssey had encountered or been given wasn't meant for humanity. It was alien, incomprehensible, and potentially catastrophic. As the pod drifted further away, they noticed something strange happening aboard the Odyssey. The glowing symbols covering its hull flared brightly, illuminating the ship like a beacon. Then, without warning, the vessel erupted in a burst of light. It wasn't an explosion, at least, not in the traditional sense. The ship seemed to dissolve, breaking apart into countless shards of energy that spiraled outward before vanishing entirely. "What just happened?" Brooks asked, his voice trembling. "I don't know," Cole admitted, "but I think we just witnessed something we weren't meant to see." The destruction of the Odyssey left them adrift in space, their escape pod damaged during the frantic launch. Communication systems were down, leaving them unable to contact the fleet. They floated, silently, surrounded by debris from the shattered ship, waiting for rescue or whatever came next. Hours passed, and the tension mounted. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. Carter stared at her scanner, replaying the data from the Odyssey over and over again in her mind. The equations, the symbols, the warnings, they all pointed to one conclusion: humanity had opened a door it couldn't close. The shard mind, whoever or whatever they were, had offered knowledge and power, but at a price. And now, that price might be coming due. Finally, a faint signal crackled through the pod's damaged comms system. It was weak, barely audible, but unmistakably human. "This is Captain Hayes," came Laura's voice, strained but steady. "Is anyone out there?" Cole grabbed the mic, his heart racing. "Captain, this is Cole. We're here. Barely. There." Was a pause. Then Hayes responded. "Status report. We're alive, but the pod's systems are failing," Cole explained. "And the Odyssey, it's gone. Destroyed itself, or something destroyed it." Hayes' tone hardened. "What about the crew? Any survivors?" Cole hesitated. "Negative. No signs of life. But there's something else. Technology unlike anything we've seen. Advanced. Dangerous. We barely escaped." Another pause, longer this time. When Hayes spoke again, her voice carried a note of dread. "Understood. Hold your position. We're sending a recovery team. And Cole, whatever you do, don't let that tech fall into the wrong hands." "Too late for that," Cole muttered under his breath after ending the transmission. He exchanged a glance with Carter, who looked equally troubled. "What do you think she meant?" Riley asked quietly. Cole shook his head. "I don't know, but I have a feeling we're not the only ones interested in what the Odyssey brought back." As they waited for rescue, the shadows of doubt lingered. The Odyssey may have been destroyed, but its secrets remained. Somewhere out there, the Shardmind watched and waited. The recovery team arrived hours later, their ship docking with the escape pod and bringing Cole and his crew aboard. The moment they stepped inside, the relief was palpably, but it was short-lived. Captain Laura Hayes greeted them personally, her expression a mix of concern and determination. She wasted no time in getting answers. "What happened out there?" she demanded, her sharp eyes scanning each member of the boarding party. Commander Ryan Cole took a deep breath before speaking. "We found the Odyssey, but it wasn't ours anymore. It was changed, filled with alien tech and markings we couldn't understand. There were warnings messages left behind by whoever was on that ship last. They talked about something called the Shard Mind." Hayes frowned. "The Shard Mind?" Dr. Emily Carter stepped forward, clutching her scanner. "It's what they encountered. Who?" The logs mentioned them offering gifts, advanced technology far beyond anything we've ever seen. But those gifts came with strings attached. Something went wrong, Captain. Very wrong. Sergeant Megan Riley chimed in, her voice tight with unease. "And whatever it was, it's still out there. Those whispers, the shadows, they weren't just in our heads. We barely made it out alive." Hayes listened intently, absorbing every word. When they finished, she turned to Lieutenant Marcus Klein, who had accompanied her on the rescue mission. "Get this data to the analysts immediately. I want to know everything we can learn about the Shard Mind and fast." As the team dispersed, Cole pulled Hayes aside. "Captain, there's more. That device we saw in the command center, it was still active when we escaped. Whatever it was, it didn't disappear with the Odyssey. If someone else finds it," Hayes nodded grimly, "then we'd better find it first. For now, keep this between us. The fewer people who know about it, the better." Back aboard the flagship, the mood was tense. Technicians worked around the clock analyzing the fragments of data retrieved from the escape pod. Dr. Carter spent most of her time in the lab, poring over the readings from her scanner. The symbols, the energy patterns, the cryptic equations, they all pointed to one thing. The Shardmine's technology operated on principles that defied human understanding. Time, space, matter itself seemed malleable under its influence, but, as days passed, strange occurrences began happening aboard the flagship. At first, they were subtle equipment malfunctioning without explanation, lights flickering in empty corridors, faint whispers heard by isolated crew members. No one wanted to admit it, but fear started to spread. People avoided certain sections of the ship, convinced they felt watched. Lieutenant Daniel Brooks was among those affected. Late one night, while reviewing schematics in the engineering bay, he swore he saw movement out of the corner of his eye. Turning quickly, he found nothing but shadows. Yet, the sensation of being observed lingered. He tried to dismiss it as fatigue, but the feeling only grew stronger. "Something's not right," he muttered to himself, glancing nervously at the darkened corners of the room. Moments later, the lights dimmed, plunging the bay into near darkness. Brooks froze, his heart pounding. From the shadows emerged faint shapes in distinct forms that shifted unnaturally, as if they existed halfway between reality and some other realm. His instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. "You shouldn't have taken it," a voice whispered, low and guttural, yet somehow layered with multiple tones. It wasn't human. Brooks stumbled backward, fumbling for his communicator. Before he could call for help, the shapes lunged, dissolving into tendrils of shadow that wrapped around him. A searing pain shot through his body, followed by an overwhelming sense of cold. Then, everything went black. When Brooks regained consciousness, he was lying on the floor of the engineering bay. The lights were back on, and the room appeared normal. Shaken but uninjured, he reported the incident to Captain Hayes. To his frustration, many dismissed his account as stress or exhaustion. Only Cole and Carter believed him, having experienced similar phenomena aboard the Odyssey. "This isn't paranoia," Carter insisted during a private meeting with Hayes. "Whatever we brought back with us, whether it's residual energy from the Odyssey or something else entirely, it's affecting the ship, and it's getting worse." Hayes sighed heavily. "I know. Reports are coming in from other parts of the fleet. Crew members claiming to hear voices, see things that aren't there. Some have even gone missing." "Missing?" Cole asked sharply. Hayes nodded. "3 so far. No signs of struggle, no trace of where they went. Just gone." Carter's face paled. "It's the Shardmine. They're here, on board." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. If the Shardmine, or whatever force they represented, had infiltrated the fleet, then humanity was facing a threat unlike any it had encountered before. Not an enemy with ships and weapons, but something far more insidious. An intelligence capable of bending reality itself. Determined to uncover the truth, Hayes ordered a full investigation. Teams were dispatched to search every inch of the flagship, while scientists worked tirelessly to replicate the energy patterns detected by Carter's scanner. Their goal was simple: identify the source of the disturbances and neutralize it before it spread further. Yet, despite their efforts, the incidents continued. One crew member reported seeing shadowy figures walking through walls. Another claimed to hear laughter echoing in empty rooms. Even Hayes herself began to feel uneasy, as though invisible eyes were watching her every move. Late one evening, she stood alone on the bridge, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft hum sound that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Slowly, she turned to see a shimmering orb of light hovering in the center of the room. It pulsed rhythmically, casting strange reflections across the walls. "What is this?" she whispered, reaching cautiously toward the orb. Before she could touch it, the ship shuddered violently. Alarms blared as consoles sparked and monitors displayed chaotic streams of data. Across the fleet, similar events unfolded simultaneously. Ships reported power failures, structural damage, and sightings of the same glowing orbs. Panic erupted as communication channels filled with frantic voices. "We're losing control," someone shouted over the intercom. "It's spreading," another voice cried. In the chaos, Cole and Carter rushed to the bridge, only to find Hayes standing frozen, her gaze locked on the orb. Around her, the shadows thickened, coalescing into humanoid shapes that loomed menacingly. "They're here," Hayes said quietly, her voice trembling. "The shard mind is here." Cole grabbed her arm, snapping her out of her trance. "We need to act now. If we don't stop this, it'll consume us all." Together, the three of them devised a plan. Using Carter's knowledge of the energy patterns, they identified the core location of the disturbance, the engine room. Somehow, the shard mind's influence had latched onto the ship's power systems, using them as a conduit to manifest physically, armed with makeshift tools designed to disrupt the alien energy. The team made their way to the engine room. Along the way, they encountered more shadowy figures, their forms shifting and distorting as they moved. Riley covered them with her weapon, firing blindly into the darkness whenever the shapes came too close. When they reached the engine room, they found the source of the disturbance, a massive crystalline structure embedded within the ship's reactor core. It pulsed with the same energy Carter had detected aboard the Odyssey, radiating waves of heat and cold in equal measure. "This is it," Carter said, her voice filled with both awe and dread. "This is how they're controlling the ship." "How? Do we shut it down?" Cole asked urgently. Carter hesitated. "If we tamper with it, we risk destabilizing the core. The entire ship could go up." "We don't have a choice," Hayes said firmly. "Do it." With shaking hands, Carter set to work, attaching cables and rerouting power flows in an attempt to sever the connection. As she worked, the shadows closed in, pressing against the edges of the room. The whispers returned, louder and more urgent than ever. "You cannot stop us," they hissed. "You are insignificant." Ignoring the voices, Carter completed her task. With a final keystroke, she triggered a surge of energy that severed the link between the crystal and the reactor. The structure shattered instantly, releasing a burst of light that blinded everyone in the room. When the brightness faded, the shadows were gone. The whispers ceased, leaving only silence. Exhausted but victorious, the team staggered out of the engine room, their faces etched with relief. For now, the immediate threat was neutralized. But none of them believed it was truly over. Somewhere beyond the stars, the shard mind waited, and they would be back. The aftermath of the engine room incident left the fleet in a state of shock. The crystalline structure had been destroyed, severing the shard mind's connection to the flagship at least for now, but the cost was high. Systems across the ship were damaged, and several crew members remained unaccounted for. Those who survived spoke of strange visions, shadowy figures reaching out to them, voices whispering promises of power or threats of doom. No one could say for sure what they had witnessed. But one thing was clear, the shard mind's influence had touched them all. Captain Laura Hayes called an emergency meeting with her senior officers. The room was tense as everyone filed in, their faces pale and drawn. Even Commander Ryan Cole, usually calm under pressure, looked shaken. Dr. Emily Carter sat quietly at the table, clutching her scanner like a lifeline. She hadn't slept since the incident, consumed by thoughts of the alien energy and its implications. "We stopped them for now," Hayes began, her voice steady despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. "But we need to understand what happened. How did the shard mind infiltrate our systems? What do they want from us?" Carter leaned forward, her expression grim. "It's not just about wanting something. This isn't a negotiation, it's domination. The shard mind doesn't think like we do. They see themselves as superior beings, almost godlike. To them, we're nothing more than tools." "How can you be so sure?" asked Lieutenant Daniel Brooks, his tone skeptical. "Because I've studied the data," Carter replied sharply. "Every symbol, Every equation points to a mindset that views existence itself as malleable. Time, space, matter, they treat these concepts like clay, to be shaped however they please. And if they gave us technology, it wasn't out of kindness. It was a test or worse, a trap. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. Then we need to assume they'll try again. We have to prepare for another attack. Before anyone could respond, Sergeant Megan Riley entered the room, her face pale. Captain, there's something you need to see. She led them to the medical bay, where doctors were examining one of the missing crew members, a young engineer named Alex Grant. When they arrived, Alex was lying on a bed, unconscious, but alive. His body was covered in faint glowing marks, similar to the symbols seen aboard the Odyssey. Doctors hovered nearby, unsure how to treat him. What happened to him? Hayes demanded. He appeared in the cargo hold, Riley explained. Just materialized out of thin air. He hasn't woken up yet, but those markings there emitting the same energy signature as the crystal. Carter approached the bed cautiously, her scanner already buzzing. As she examined the marks, her brow furrowed. This isn't random. These patterns are deliberate. They're rewriting his biology. Rewriting, Cole repeated, alarmed. You mean they're changing him? Carter interrupted. On a cellular level, whatever this is, it's not done with us. As if on cue, Alex stirred, his eyes fluttering open. For a moment, he seemed disoriented, but then his gaze locked onto Hayes. His lips moved, forming words that sent chills down everyone's spines. They are coming, he whispered hoarsely. They will make you see. Suddenly, his body convulsed, violently, and the glowing marks flared brightly. The lights in the medical bay flickered, and monitors displayed erratic readings. Then, just as quickly as it began, the surge subsided. Alex went limp, his breathing shallow but stable. Hayes turned to Carter. What does that mean? Make us see. I don't know, Carter admitted. But it's a warning. Whatever the Shardmine plans next, it's going to be big. Over the next few days, paranoia spread throughout the fleet. Crew members avoided each other, convinced their comrades might be compromised. Some reported seeing faint traces of the glowing marks on their skin, though no physical evidence remained. Others claimed to hear whispers even in crowded rooms, voices urging them to surrender or join the Shard Mind to combat the growing fear. Hayes implemented strict protocols. Every ship in the fleet conducted thorough scans of their personnel and equipment. Any anomalies were reported immediately, no matter how minor. Despite these measures, incidents continued to occur. On one vessel, an officer vanished without a trace during routine maintenance. On another, a reactor malfunctioned inexplicably, nearly causing catastrophic damage. Amid the chaos, Carter worked tirelessly in the lab, analyzing every scrap of data related to the Shard Mind. Her obsession bordered on madness, but she couldn't stop. If humanity stood any chance against this threat, she needed to understand it completely. Her breakthrough came unexpectedly. While reviewing fragments of the Odyssey's logs, she noticed recurring references to a specific phrase, the veil. At first, she dismissed it as metaphorical, perhaps describing the boundary between dimensions. But as she cross-referenced the term with the alien equations, a horrifying realization dawned on her. The veil isn't a boundary, she told Cole and Hayes during a private briefing. It's a constructa barrier created by the Shard Mind to separate realities, and they've been weakening it. Weakening it, Hayes echoed. Why would they do that? To bring their world into ours, Carter said grimly. Think of it like opening a door. Each time they interact with our reality through the Odyssey, through the crystal there, widening the gap. Once the veil collapses, their realm will merge with ours. And when that happens, she didn't need to finish. Everyone understood the implications. A merger of realities would obliterate everything humanity knew. Physical laws would collapse. Time would fracture, and existence itself would become unrecognizable. If that's true, Then destroying the crystal wasn't enough, Cole said. We only delayed the inevitable. There's more, Carter added hesitantly. I think the shard mind has agents among us. Not possessed humans, exactly, but individuals whose minds have been altered to serve their purpose. You mean spies? Hayes asked sharply. Not in the traditional sense, Carter clarified. More like conduits. People who can channel their influence without realizing it. That's why we keep seeing these disturbances, even after we destroyed the crystal. The revelations sent a wave of unease through the group. If the shard mind had infiltrated their ranks, then trust was a luxury they could no longer afford. Every decision, every action, carried the risk of playing directly into the enemy's hands. Determined to take control of the situation, Hayes ordered increased surveillance across the fleet. Security teams monitored communications for unusual activity, while engineers reinforced critical systems to prevent further sabotage. Meanwhile, Carter focused her efforts on finding a way to strengthen the veil, to repair the damage caused by the shardmind's interference. Her research led her to an unexpected discovery. The glowing marks on Alex Grant's body weren't just altering his biology, they were acting as conduits for shardmind energy. By studying their patterns, she identified a frequency that resonated with the veil. If amplified correctly, it could potentially stabilize the barrier. This might work, she told Cole, as they reviewed the findings. If we generate a pulse using this frequency, we could reinforce the veil long enough to buy ourselves some time. It's risky, Cole warned. If we get it wrong, we could make things worse. We don't have a choice, Carter insisted. If we wait too long, the shardmind will finish what they started. Reluctantly, Cole agreed. Together, they presented the plan to Hayes, who approved it despite the risks. Preparations began immediately, with technicians modifying existing equipment to emit the required pulse. The entire operation would take place aboard the flagship, which housed the most advanced technology available. As the countdown to activation began, tension mounted. Crew members secured themselves in designated safe zones, while security teams patrolled the corridors to ensure no disruptions occurred. In the command center, Hayes stood beside Cole and Carter, watching as the final adjustments were made. Are you ready? Hayes asked, her voice firm, but tinged with apprehension. As ready as we'll ever be, Carter replied, her hands trembling slightly as she entered the final sequence. The machines hummed to life, building energy steadily. Lights dimmed across the ship as power was redirected to the pulse generator. For a moment, everything seemed to go according to plan. Then, without warning, alarms blared. Energy levels are spiking. Someone shouted, "We're losing containment." Carter frantically adjusted the controls, trying to stabilize the system. It's resisting. The shard mind must have anticipated this. Before anyone could react, the pulse erupted prematurely, sending waves of energy rippling through the ship. Monitors displayed chaotic visuals, distorted images of alien landscapes, shifting forms, and swirling voids. The whispers returned, louder than ever, filling the air with overlapping voices. And then, something emerged in the center of the command center. A vortex opened, a swirling mass of light and shadow that defied comprehension. From within, shapes began to form. Insectoid creatures with shimmering exoskeletons and countless limbs. Their presence warped perception itself, making it impossible to look directly at them for more than a few seconds. "They're here," Hayes whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. Cole raised his weapon, aiming at the nearest figure. Fire, at will. Bullets passed harmlessly through the entities, dissipating into nothingness. The creatures advanced slowly, their movements fluid and unnatural. One of them extended a limb toward Hayes, its touch sending waves of agony through her body. Ignoring her,